Hello, listeners. Welcome to another program of Teaching English by rambling around a topic. Today's topic is self driving cars. Today, we are going to go over all the advantages and disadvantages of driving around in a self driving car. You might have heard a lot about this topic recently since it's been a sort of trendy topic. Everywhere you go, you hear people talking about self-driving cars and the necessity and need of our societies to move from ordinary cars to self-driving cars and get used to them. But that is not as easy as some people might think. It comes with a lot of disadvantages that might uh, make things even more complicated than now. Today, we are going to talk about this topic and discover all the vocabulary words you need to talk about this topic in English. First, let's talk about the advantages. Well, the first advantage is it reduces using a self-driving car, reduces human error because there is no human intervention in the way the car works. But don't get me wrong, reduced human error is not always good. A self-driving car, which is run by its own computer, might lead to other errors, not human made errors, but computer made errors. But statistics tell us that the errors made by computers are far less than the ones made by humans. But here's another problem. You know, when currently we have a lot of car accidents on the roads every day. Okay, but people have taken it as granted. People don't pay enough attention to the fact that human also can cause a lot of accidents on the road. But when a self-driving car causes an accident, then everybody's going to talk about it. Then you're going to see it on the top of the news. That's, I think, a wrong approach to self-driving cars, something we need to work on. For example, currently we have 100 accidents caused by human error every day where I live in Iran. But nobody's talking about it. Once there is one error made by computer which causes a lethal accident on the road, then everybody's gonna say, "Oh, we need to return to human driving cars. We should completely forget about self-driving cars." That is not what we should think about when it comes to driving self-driving car. When it comes to using self-driving cars on our roads, we need to kind of work on our approach to this topic and treat it a bit more friendly than we currently do. Well, let's talk about the next advantage of self-driving cars. It is the environmental benefits. Efficient driving patterns and potential integration with other electric vehicles, other self-driving electric vehicles can lower CO2 emissions. When you drive your car by yourself, when you are the driver of your car, sometimes you may brake too much or accelerate the car when it's not necessary. So you just increase the speed unnecessarily, and then decrease the speed to when the car in front of you decreases their speed, you have to push the brake pedal. That is um, that is not uh, in line with the environmental patterns that you must follow in order to keep the air clean. Because when you increase the speed of your car and then decrease it again by pushing the brake pedal, you burn some energy, you burn some fuel for nothing. The self-driving cars don't do that. They check the road in advance. When they see uh, by their own computer that there is a traffic jam ahead, they they don't need to increase their speed, because if they do that, then after a couple of minutes they'll have to reduce it again, and that causes some negative environmental impacts. And they don't have to do all of the wrong things a human does when they drive a car. So that is another advantage of driving, of going around in self-driving cars. Um, Another thing about them is that they, um, since they don't have any human drivers, they don't have any um, monkey drivers. Let's call the human driver a monkey driver who has a lot of limitations in thinking efficiently. So a human cannot think efficiently, at least as efficiently as a computer can do. When self-driving cars drive on the road, they are all connected to the internet. They have all this AI core that keeps all of them connected to a fast network on which they can communicate with other cars. That is a great advantage, because let's imagine a crossroads, okay? Sometimes you may have experienced getting stuck in a crossroads just because you don't know how to communicate effectively with other drivers that are entering the crossroads or leaving it. We have just two channels to that we can. A human can just use two channels to communicate with other drivers in a crossroads. It is uh, using their horn. They can honk the horn to message the other drivers that they are coming, or they can just follow the rules of red lights and green lights on the crossroads. Well, that is a very primitive sort of communication. It's not fast, it's not as effective. In order to get rid of that, we have to completely replace the human drivers with computer drivers. When a computer is driving a car, they communicate with other drivers who are about to enter the crossroads, telling them they are coming. And the other cars then will have to wait until the crossroads is totally empty, then enter it. That's a very effective way of communication that only computers can do. Okay, now look at this other advantage of using self-driving cars. We don't need too many parking spots in busy areas. When you drive your car by yourself, you would like to park your car as close to where you need to be as you can. That means we need a lot of parking spots in the busy areas. Uh, that need is completely ruled out when we start using self-driving cars. Using self-driving cars, we don't have to park our car close to where we need to go, because the car itself can drop us off near our destination and then drive around looking for a parking spot that could be even some kilometers far from where we were dropped off. So that is another advantage. The self-driving cars can drop passengers off and then go park themselves in a free area. Um, let's talk about one of the main disadvantages of using self-driving cars. I personally think that the main disadvantage of that is the cyber security risks. Autonomous vehicles. Autonomous means self-driving, means independent. Autonomous vehicles are vulnerable to hacking, and when that happens, they can lead to more accidents than usual. When we think of using self-driving cars instead of ordinary cars, the primary goal that comes to mind is to reduce the traffic jam and turn the driving experience into a more pleasant experience. But imagine you are using self-driving cars and only self-driving cars on the roads, and then somebody from the enemy hacks into the brain system, the computer system of the self-driving cars, causing them to completely go out of control. Can you imagine that situation? The primary goal, which was to reduce the traffic jam, is completely jammed now, and we are going to have even more car accidents on the road as a result of someone hacking our autonomous cars, our self-driving cars. Well, we don't want that to happen. So before we can completely move from ordinary cars to using self-driving cars, we have to make sure we have the means to protect them against cyber security attacks. That is the most important disadvantage that the current system of self-driving cars can pose to the roads and the safety of drivers. Then we have job displacements. Truck drivers, taxi operators, and delivery guys may face job losses or at least reduced employment opportunities. When the cars and the bikes, even the bikes can be autonomous in the future, when they are driven by their own computer, there won't be any need for a human driver. So some people are going to lose their jobs, especially in the transportation industry. When we talk about this type of disadvantage, there is no way to prevent them, to tackle them. I believe every progress in technology comes with a disadvantage that we have to accept. Otherwise, we'll never be able to use technology to comfort human life. This is like a two-sided coin. One side is the advantage and the other side is the disadvantage. In order to be able to use the advantage, you have to put up with the disadvantage. Otherwise, you'll never be able to turn your societies into autonomous societies where people have a better experience of transportation and in general have a better life. Then we have high costs of maintaining self-driving cars. Developing and implementing the technology could be too expensive. Self-driving cars rely heavily on fast internet connection. In order to enable them to operate properly, you have to provide fast internet connection for them everywhere where you expect them to drive properly. Sometimes when I go out of the town, I see my phone's internet connection is completely lost, or the speed of it reduces significantly. We need to kind of solve those problems of internet connection, even in remote areas, before we can totally implement self-driving cars and the technology of them on our roads. You don't want to drive your self-driving car outside the city and then get stuck there. Your car's gonna break down once it loses access to the internet connection, which currently can happen very often when you go to remote places. We have to improve the internet connection and communication technologies that provide fast internet connection everywhere around the country. It has to be available even in remote areas. If you're totally thinking about replacing ordinary cars with self-driving cars. And then this is another disadvantage. I should have mentioned this at the beginning because it's quite important. It is privacy concerns of using autonomous cars. These cars collect your data, raising questions about who owns it and who could possibly use it against you in the future. When you drive your own car, nobody's gonna understand where you're going. Nobody, unless they have a GPS tracker attached to your car, which is very unlikely if you are an ordinary person. They are not going to understand where you go, how long you stay at a particular place. But using self-driving cars collects your data of transport. The company owning this data can sell it to anyone who might be using it against you. Sometimes I don't even want my family to know where I'm going. Using a self-driving car collects the data of my transports and can share it with anyone who's curious about where I go or where I have gone all through my life. So that is a privacy breach. I don't want that. I don't want any computer to collect the data of my transport. I think you neither. This is another disadvantage that comes with using self-driving cars. So far, I believe I've covered many of the most important advantages and disadvantages of self-driving cars. However, there is more to say if you intend to dive deeper into this topic. This video is for beginner and intermediate learners of English. The level of language I use to talk about everyday topics in my podcasts is quite basic. I hope as a beginner or intermediate learner of English, you are able to understand at least 90% of what I say in my programs. As I always say at the end of my videos, I look forward to hearing from you and your suggestions as to which topics interest you most. I really need some feedback here. Talking about a topic in English is not so difficult, but finding an interesting topic that can attract the audience is quite difficult. I need you to help me with that. Until next time and another podcast in English, take care. Goodbye.